Okay, greetings everyone, and welcome to my presentation, Using Academic Writer to Learn and Write in APA Style. My name is Amy Copeland. I'm an academic tutor, and you can reach me by email at the address at the bottom of your screen, amycopeland@fscj.edu. Wow. So as we get started with this presentation, the first thing I'd like to do is talk about a little bit of background, and we'll also look at some objectives for this presentation. Okay, so let's discuss a few things about uh, academic styles. A lot of students don't even understand what an academic style is or why we have to use it. Does anyone have any thoughts on what's the point of an academic style? Okay, Alec, thank you.
Um, an academic style, as in, I know in a particular way in which you write, say, an essay
Sure.
or say a dissertation. It depends on which academic style is preferred for a professor,
Mhm.
or usually it's common to write an APA style, or I think is it MLA style?
Yes, MLA is the other one that's common at FSCJ.
Yes, and so it's very common to usually write your typical term papers in APA or MLA style. And I think those are the only two I remember working on when I was in college. So those are particularly the main points of writing, pretty much.
Okay, all right. So that's a great response, Alec, and I thank you for contributing. Another thing that students often struggle with, well, why on earth do we have to do our papers in a particular way? So I'll go ahead and answer that question by explaining that when you have a group of scholars, the idea when you're writing papers is to share ideas among scholars of various disciplines. And when people are writing and sharing information with each other, it's helpful for people to do things in a consistent way because that way all the readers who get to see that work kind of know what to expect. So that's really the main reason why we have those kinds of styles. And APA style, as you said, is one of the two that's pretty common here at FSCJ. APA actually stands for American Psychological Association, and they are the group that dictates the requirements of this style. They usually have a committee that updates it every several years. So the APA style is something that you can read about in a book, but we also have a tool here at FSCJ called Academic Writer. And that is the APA's tool that they developed to help to teach students and help them learn how to write effectively and provides technical tools for doing that writing as well. So anyone who has to write an APA paper can benefit from using Academic Writer. Students in programs with heavy APA writing requirements are going to get the most out of it though. And those students, generally speaking, that would be human services programs, the nursing programs, occupational therapy, and business programs. I believe education is another one that uses APA heavily. But really, anyone who ever has to write an APA paper can benefit from using this tool. So the objectives today, at the end of this session, what you're going to learn is how to use the tool. So my goal isn't to teach students in this presentation everything you need to know about APA style, because that's the purpose of the database, is to teach you what you need to know as you need to know it, kind of just in time. And so there are three features we're going to look at within the Academic Writer database. We're going to look at the Learn tab, we're going to look at the Reference tab, and we're going to look at the Write tab. So before we do that, though, we need to learn how to get to the academic writer database. And so I've given you some steps here, but if this seems like it's in a foreign language, don't worry, because in a minute I'm going to show you some screenshots and I think it'll be a lot clearer. But the starting point is your My FSCJ page, where you log in to do a lot of things like access Canvas and so forth. When you go on that page, there's some hot links to the right. One of them is the Library and Learning Commons hot link, and you just click that. Then you'll be at the search page, where you need to click the blue Library Databases button. Once you're on the Library Databases A to Z page, you scroll down to the link that says Academic Writer and just click it. So here are the screenshots. You'll see on the left a screenshot of the right side of your My FSCJ screen where the useful links appear. I haven't shown all of them here. The picture is a little bit truncated, but I think it clearly illustrates where you can find that link. Then I took a screenshot. Again, this isn't the full screen, but enough of the screen to give you the flavor of it. And this is the screen where you have the main Library and Learning Commons search page. And you'll see a circled item in the upper corner there, which is the blue button for the library databases. So we're going to go on and look at what that page looks like. On the left, you'll see a screenshot of the A to Z databases page that pops up. And since it's alphabetized, all you have to do is scroll down, as I've shown on the right side of this picture, and you'll scroll to the Academic Writer database, and there you simply click that link, and you'll be in Academic Writer. Any questions so far?
All good. Thank you.
Clear? Okay, good. So the features of Academic Writer, as I said before, there are three main tabs that we're going to go over today. The first tab is called the Learn tab. And this is a view of what it looks like when you first open up Academic Writer. So we've clicked the link and here we are. The Learn tab does not require the student to create a personal account. And within that tab, the student would be able to access many quick guides, as well as tutorials and sample papers that they can study. Because different professors have different types of assignments. Some courses actually require the student to perform a research project and document it. So that requires a certain type of a paper, as opposed to something where the student is just writing a general paper or a review or a response paper. So this is the main screen for the Learn tab. And once you've clicked the Learn tab, you can go into the, sorry, let me go back. You can click in the Learn tab, you can click one of the green buttons to go to the quick guides, go to the tutorials, or go to the sample papers or references. In this case, I've clicked the quick guides green button, and this is what I see. Now, in these quick guides, each of those sections opens out into more guides. So you see under citing sources, there are 5 different quick guides. Each of those quick guides is only going to take about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, but it allows the student to zero in on exactly what they need. They could also expand the tab under bias-free language and a number of different tutorials on choosing the proper language to avoid bias. They could click any of the other tabs down below, manuscript sections, mechanics of style, etc. And each one will have several guides. I believe there's a total of 71 of these quick guides. But you can see that it allows the student to really zero in on exactly the problem they're trying to solve or the skill that they're trying to learn how to do. Right? And then next I'm going to show the tutorials. So once you're in those quick guides, you can see the tabs across the top that allow you to, you don't have to go back out to that main screen. You can just click the next tab. So there are 18 tutorial videos. The tutorial videos are quite a bit longer. They're going to run anywhere from maybe 30 minutes to possibly up to an hour. But they're much more intensive and detailed. So you'll see in the tutorials that we're only breaking them down into two different categories. There's a research category that talks about various approaches and ways that the students have to know how to do their research. And they're really specifically around the type of research where you're actually conducting some sort of an experiment. The ones that would be most commonly used would be the writing ones, though, because these are where you get into the nitty-gritty of kind of an overview of APA style. What do you need to know about copyrights and permission? How do you avoid plagiarism? And issues like that. So again, these tutorials are great for students to get a better idea of what's expected in APA. The next item in the tabs is going to show you some sample papers. So in the sample papers, what's really great about this is many students don't realize there are so many different kinds of paper that you can write. There's theoretical papers, there's responses to readings, there are empirical studies where the student is actually doing the experiment. There are case studies where the student is analyzing maybe a company or something like that. So each of those types of papers has some standards around what's commonly included and how it's set up. And what you can do is you can click on one of the types of papers and you'll see to the right side of the screen there's a brief description, but then underneath that there's a thumbnail sketch. And the student can click on that thumbnail and download it to see the whole sample paper. So that's really useful. A lot of students aren't really quite clear. We talk about all this formatting and rules and stuff, but they can't picture what it's going to look like when they're finished. So that's a great tool for them. So let me just back up for a moment and point out there are some more tabs over there. And I'm not going to show you those tabs today because very few students will have to do tables and figures, but if they needed to, they can look it up there. The sample references, we can see examples of the references, but in terms of actually creating them, the reference tab tool is really strong for that. So that's what I'm going to focus on. The last thing I'll say about this particular screen is that last tab to the right, the My Favorites, it says 0 right there, only because I did not have myself logged in when I looked at this account. I said before the student isn't required to have the account set up to use this section of the database, but if you want to favorite something so that it's quick and easy to get back to it, then you will need to be logged in, even when you're under the Learn tab. Okay, so let's move on to the Reference tab now. In the Reference tab, that's where, for the first time, if a user is going in there and they click on one of those green buttons, go to My References or Add References, they're going to be prompted to set up their free account. And they'll use their FSCJ user email address and a password that they choose. And as far as I know, that password doesn't expire. But they can continue to use that account for as long as they're affiliated with FSCJ. And what's great about this reference tab is it provides forms for every type of reference under the sun. And the forms even have guidance. So a lot of students may use something like EasyBib or Citation Machine. Those are great tools, but I have never seen a tool that gives as much guidance on how to fill in the form as this tool does. The other thing that it does that's just amazing is it saves all the references that you set up in there. And I see this with a lot of nursing students and human services students where they can reuse those references for multiple papers. So, for example, a lot of students are allowed to use their textbooks. And so you might have a semester-long course using a single textbook, and you probably have to get some other sources too for your papers. But once you put that textbook in there, you don't ever have to do it again. So it saves a lot of manual labor and stressing about is it right and is it formatted properly and everything. And then when the student is writing another paper, they simply select the references that they want to include in that paper, and it's automatically included. It's pretty nifty. All right, so we're going to see the References tab in action. We're going to look at a set of references that was already created, as well as what it looks like when you add something. And then I'll demonstrate how they work with the writing part when we get to the Write tab. So for now, we're just going to look at what happens if I go to my references. And what you'll see here is a list of references that I've already set up within the paper. Now about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 down where it says American Psychological Association, that is a reference for computer software. And I created that because I wanted to have a references page for this presentation. And that's the main source of the presentation is this software that I'm demonstrating. I had no idea that there was even a format for creating a reference for computer software. But this is what I'm talking about when I say how powerful this tool is, because it tells you every category under the sun that you could possibly think of, and categories I had never thought of. So it's, just so supportive to the students. You can see the little check boxes to the left of those items, and that's where I could check that box off. And when I want to include it with a paper, you'll see a plus sign up at the top of the list where it says add references, where I can open up a form to choose what kind of reference I'm going to create. And then to the right of each entry, you'll see a little pencil with a button that says abstract and add notes. So that allows me to edit the information in the reference, as well as it might be helpful to me in my studies and preparing to write the paper. It might be helpful for me to copy and paste the abstract, which is a summary of the article, into those notes. So it's just stored right there with the reference so that I can look at it to determine if it's a useful reference. I can even have a notes area where I can attach notes to that particular reference. If I want to indicate for myself, okay, I think I'm going to use the stuff on page 156 and on page 161, I could put some little notes there. I could even copy and paste quotes into the notes box that I know that I'm going to use for my paper. So let's look at what happens when we add a reference. The screenshot on the left doesn't show you all the categories that pop up. I showed you two of the most common that students will use though, which is the periodicals and the books or book chapters. And so when the student goes to this screen, they have to choose the specific kind of periodical. And in most cases, that's going to be a journal article. So that's what I circled to show you that the form on the right side of the screen is the form that you complete when you're indicating a journal article. And so the student can put in one author at a time, or they can indicate that there's no author, or they can indicate that the author is an organization or agency, which is often the case, for example, in a government website like Department of Labor, things like that. That would be an agency as author. They can put in the last, and they're prompted to put in the last name, put in the initials, so that they can't get that wrong. Once you put in the first author, you click Save and Format, and it's going to give you another box to add in another author's name. Then as you go down the form, you're putting in a date, you're putting in the title of the article. And one thing that you'll see to the right of the title box is a little button that says format in sentence case. Because in APA, there's crazy little rules about how you have to format the title of an article, and it breaks all the rules we've ever learned in any other class. Normally, titles, we capitalize all the important words, but in APA, for journal titles in your reference, it's only the first word and proper names. But even if you didn't know that, once you've typed in that title, all you have to know is click this green button and it'll make your title formatted properly. So that's pretty cool. Once you fill in all the things, this form also has those spaces where you can copy and paste the abstract. You can put in some notes if you want to, or a quote that you might want to use, and there's a save button. Once you've done that, it'll look just like it looked in the list of the references I've already done. Okay. Before we go to the right tab, any questions so far? All right, thank you.
I think it's really cool how you can just implement it in the software. Academic Writer can just pretty much fill it in. It saves you a lot of time and energy, and that's something that's a great resource.
It absolutely does. The students, unfortunately, it's been really hard to get students to adopt this technology. And that's why I keep doing this presentation because I really think it could save students so much time and effort in the long run and really even help eliminate some stress about whether they're doing something right or not. So going on to the right tab, um, when the student uses this right tab, if they have not already used the reference tab or they haven't created an account, again, when they try to push one of these orange buttons for write a new paper or go to my papers, they're going to be prompted to set up an account. It's the same login, same account for any of the tabs. It's all the same database. And here it's also helpful that this system will store every paper that they create while they're enrolled as a student. The writing tool is very intuitive. The buttons are quite similar to Word, except that it has a couple of cool special features I'm going to show you that are helpful for writing APA papers. And again, the paper itself will allow you to select from your stored list of references that are sitting over there in that references tab. And those references can be used over and over again if need be. And then finally, this feature allows the student at any time to download the paper. They can choose to download it as a Word file or a PDF file. So it's not just stuck up there in the cloud somewhere. They can always move that paper onto their own device. All right, so let's move on and look at what happens when you say you want to write a new paper. The first thing you're going to get is this template of the different types of papers. So 9 times out of 10, the student is going to be just writing a basic paper, which is the one down there in the bottom right corner. But we have many, many nursing students who have to write literature reviews, or they even have to write an empirical paper of some sort of a qualitative study they're doing. And so these other samples and templates are really great. But most of the time a student is writing basics, so that's the one we're going to look at today. Once they've selected the template, then the screen on the left pops up and asks them how they're going to use the paper. Because in APA style today, there's 2 different formats, one for students and one for professionals. So in a student assignment, they're not required to have a running head, an author note, an abstract, or keywords. However, some professors will assign sort of a hybrid paper. Well, they say it's a student paper, but we also want you to have an abstract with keywords. So there's a way to add those sections if they're needed. So in most cases, our students are going to choose the student assignment. Once they've clicked that, they're going to get a little dialog box where they can title their paper. So they're going to put the little paper title in there and just click Start Writing. Or you see there's that orange button next to Start Writing where they could go ahead and check off the references that they're going to include with this paper. They could do that now, but there's also a way to do it later. So now I'm going to show what it looks like. Before I show the writing features, I'm going to show you what it looks like to go to a saved paper. So if I were to click Go to My Papers, I'm going to see a list of several papers that have been, that I've created. Some of them are nothing more than a silly title because I just wanted something to be out there for people to look at, for the presentation or when I'm showing it to a student. But there's my list of papers, and I can go in and access any of them. So I think it's easiest to show the features of the word processor by showing you a paper that's already out there. So this paper is called Causes and Treatment of Sleep Disorders, an overview. And you'll see that it appears here in the editing box. And on the left side of the page, you'll see a list of menu items. So you're in the right part right now, but there's also a place for the title page, abstract, the keywords. Even though we said it was a student paper, we can click those and fill in the forms and put in whatever is needed for that paper. What you'll also see on the left side of the screen is an outline of the paper. And that outline is following the headings that have been placed into the paper. So you can see there where overview of the limbic system, that's the first main heading. And then you can jump to various sections of the paper simply by clicking the item in the outline on the left. So let's look at how you would cite a reference and use a reference in the paper. And in this case, I didn't even designate it before I started writing the paper, but I came to a point where I realized, oh, I need an in-text citation. I'm talking about something a particular author said. Certainly, I don't want to plagiarize, so I've got to cite it. So the first thing I do is I click that Insert tab. And then I'm going to see this list of actions, and I'm going to click the one that says Find and Cite Reference. Once I do that, then I have on the right side of my screen a pop-up that I'm going to see. And I'm going to see that same list of references that we've looked at a couple of times already. And the little check boxes, I can check one off, and then at the top of the list, you see a little button that says Cite with some quotes around it. So that's my next step, is I'm going to click that button. What happens next is I'm going to get a pop-up with some options. On the left, you'll see a couple of questions. The first question is my citation parenthetical or narrative? Now, the student, if they were working on their own, they might not know what those words mean, but they could go back to the Learn tab and find out. Or I could explain to you right now that parenthetical is when you put the reference in some parentheses at the end of a sentence, whereas narrative means you mention their names in the sentence before the information appears. So in this case, we're going to do a parenthetical citation. And then the next question it asks me is this a quotation? And the reason why it does that is because if it's a quote, I'm going to also be prompted for a page number. In this case, no, we're not quoting anything. We're simply reporting what Abbott Smith et al. Said about something in our own words, but we're still giving them credit because that's important. We don't want to, even though it's not in their words, it's still their idea, and we don't want to steal it. So now that I've done that, look what happened. All I had done was position my cursor, click insert, find and cite a reference, and filled in the dialogues, and boom, there's my in-text citation, and I don't have to stress over whether I did it right, because there it is and it's correct. So another nice feature of the Write tab is that it gives you a way to set up those headings. And in APA style, headings have levels that function somewhat like an outline. So the first level heading has requirements to be centered, bold-faced, title case. All the student has to do is type the heading in the paper and then click which heading level they need. And the system will format all those little particulars like flush left or boldface or italics, and so on and so forth. Now, in this screenshot, I'm just showing you what happens when you click the Preview tab. And it's going to show the first page of the paper. And then if you click on the paper, it allows you to download it. So, let's see, I'm going to the next page. There's also a tool called Collaborate. And I think this is a neat tool for students who are assigned group papers, because all they have to do is they can use this little form here to add users based on their email address, and then they can even assign sections to each user. And I know that when students are collaborating on papers, there's always all kinds of issues that come up. But by doing it this way, everyone can go in there and contribute to the same file in real time or at different times. And they can each know where they're supposed to be going to do the sections. And it's also a great record for the professor that the student could share with the professor in those cases where once in a while there's a group member who's not really pulling their weight, they're not doing what they were asked to do, and it's very clear who did what and who didn't do something. And then the students don't have to get in the middle of that, they can just show this to the professor. Now there are some tabs along the left-hand side that I want to talk about. I'm not actually going to show you these in detail, but I do want to mention them. In the Research Lab book, there are tools for developing a research idea, and this would be the kind of research where the student is actually performing some kind of a study. So there are some tools and dialogues that they can fill in to develop their ideas. The next box is a tool for planning and tracking that research. And then the box below that is a common assignment, an annotated bibliography. So the annotated bibliography is basically a list of references, but it also includes some information that the student writes to describe or summarize what's in that resource and whether it might be helpful for other students. And the nice thing about this tool is, the reference tool helps them set up the reference correctly. And then it just gives you a little box, and you type in the box your information, and you can create your annotated bibliography just like that. Print it out for your professor or download it, and you're good to go. There are also tabs for describing the tests and measures if a student is, again, performing that independent research. And they can even, if there are people participating in that, they can track those participants. Beneath that, there are some orange words. So the right is just where we were before. Check will run the student through some things like grammar and spelling, and do I have Do I have a citation for everything that I've checked off from my reference list? Do I have a reference for everything I've cited? Those kinds of issues. And then there's an export tool that the student would use, and that's what they're going to click when they're ready to download that file into a Word or PDF document. So here, this will just show you some of the things that can be checked. You can check the order of your headings. You can check if all the headings actually have something to go with it or not. When they don't, that's called an orphan heading. Check your references and make sure that there's a reference match to each citation. Making sure if your student is using tables or figures or appendixes, that they have call outs for those, that they can check their word count, all those things in there. And then also in the export feature that you see on the right side of the screen is an option to email it to someone. So you can either email it and you'll have a choice of Word or PDF, or you can download it as Word or PDF. So those were all the features that I was prepared to show today. I wanted to just check in and see if there's any questions now that I've shown those features.
No questions at this time, but I just want to say thank you for showing me this because I can also show this to my future students who I will be seeing in the fall semester at
Okay.
Kent campus. So I appreciate this and I appreciate this PowerPoint that you showed today.
All right. I appreciate that feedback. I just, the last couple of pages here are some other resources. This is the link that you use. The first one is the link for accessing some instructions on how to use our virtual tutoring system. So this virtual tutoring system in BrainFuse is set up where FSCJ tutors are available, but you have to know where to go in BrainFuse to get to the FSCJ tutors. So the how-to videos on the page at the link here are the best way for students to learn how to do that. The other link that I provided was the link for the FSCJ Library and Learning Commons, because often when students are doing research, they may need some support from a librarian. If they go to that link, a chat pop-up automatically appears during our service hours, and they can immediately start chatting with a librarian. And in some cases, the librarian even has the option to convert to an audio chat. So that's a very helpful service as well. And then my final slide is just my list of references in APA style. So I just wanted to show that I was doing it all properly. But that concludes my presentation, and I do appreciate your time listening today and watching. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and I hope that if you find this tool useful, that you'll share it with other people. If you still have any questions about how to use it, students, please don't hesitate to schedule an appointment in BrainFuse, and I can show you more about how it works.